Did you know that St. Luke's University Health Network, based in the Lehigh Valley, Pennsylvania, has been recognized by the U.S. government as the highest performing health system in the United States for quality? You heard right. St. Luke's #1 recognition affirms our status as the top leader among the most respected healthcare providers in the nation, including Houston Methodist and the Mayo Clinic. To state it simply, if you want to receive the best care when you go to a hospital, come to St. Luke's.
Listen, all you New Yorkers. Excuse me. Taxi.
Okay, man, we're looking around.
This is the 77 WABC minicast.
Rich Lowry is a great guest and a dear friend at this point. He's the editor of the National Review, which is an amazing publication. Rich, what do you think? Again, I don't want to give away names, but I have spoken to a few people who said that's a slippery slope, kind of dangerous, what the president is doing. Others, like me, are so far up the president's ass that we don't care. So you tell me what you think.
Well, it's right that what was done to him was disgraceful, including the IRS leak. Now, someone was punished for that, I believe, might still be in jail, certainly jailed for a while, which was appropriate. But this might be technically legal, this slush fund or whatever you want to call it, but it's
Wait, hold on.
Yep.
You can't say technically legal and then say slush fund.
Well, it is kind of a slush fund because, but there's provision in the law for some judgment account or forget whatever they call it. But this is kind of extravagant. We don't know who's going to get it or why. And Todd Blanche, we've talked about this before, is doing everything he can to remove that acting from the first part of his title. So. $1.776 billion, he's working it. So look, I am not opposed to the idea that some people deserve restitution, but I'm a little skeptical of this. And kind of big appropriations like this, I think our system depends on Congress doing that. You go to Congress and you ask for money. That's like the foundation of it. So again, even if it's technically legal, I don't think Congress ever should have created such a fund. I think this is kind of exploitative use of it. So I'm not a fan.
Yeah, you sound exactly like the person who I spoke to yesterday, who's a big-time person. That's all I'm going to say. All right, you mentioned Congress, and what a great night for me. I hate Tom Massey. I really do.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I never used the word hate as much doing sports. I didn't really, I didn't like the people on the Eagles or, the Islanders, but hate. But I'm using that word a lot these days. Like, I do hate Mamdani. I hate him. I hate Hochul. And I hated Thomas Massey. He's just another backstabbing, anti-American, anti-Israel, anti-Trump jerk. And I don't know how he lasted for 14 years, but what we saw happen in Indiana a couple of weeks ago, 5 legislators went against Trump. They all lost. Bill Cassidy in Louisiana, see ya. Jerk off Thomas Massey in Kentucky, see ya. Becoming increasingly obvious that MAGA is alive and well, and if you mess with Trump, your career may be over. I like that. What about you?
Totally. He's the most powerful president within his party, perhaps ever in American history. I can't think of anything comparable. Maybe FDR, maybe Andrew Jackson, but they didn't live at a time and didn't have the ability or willingness to go out and end the career specifically of anyone who crossed them, which Trump does. So Massey, of course, because he's an anti-Semite, is blaming the Jews for going down. It was crossing Trump. That's the reason he went down. Did Liz Cheney go down because of the Jews? Bill Cassidy go down because of the Jews? All those state senators in Indiana go down because of the Jews? No, they went down because Trump opposed them. Now, there's a lot of pro-Israel money that was lodged against him, but the rule he wants to create and the supporters want to create is they can be viciously anti-Israel, and then no one can oppose them or go out and try to defeat them fair and square in an election. And that's what happened. He was in that district for 7 terms and couldn't convince 50% of people to vote for him because he spun off onto another planet. He was a conspiracy theorist. He was a prime driver of the Epstein stuff, which I think we're the only 2 people in the United States who think that's all BS, never should have happened. But he drove it and then smeared innocent people over it and is viciously and bitterly, irrationally anti-Israel. So good riddance.
Good riddance. And the Epstein thing for me was it just wasn't real because he served, as you said, for 14 years. He had ample time when Joe Biden was president to rail about Epstein. He had ample time back in 2016 when Trump first won to rail about Epstein. You're telling me that all of a sudden in 2024, he started caring about Epstein. Same thing with Marjorie Taylor Greene, okay? Yeah. She loved the smell of Trump's farts. And now all of a sudden she's gone Epstein crazy. My issue is none of that is real. None of it.
Yeah, so he alleged some deep conspiracy where there's this massive child trafficking ring that every powerful person in the planet was involved in, and it was just never true. The SDNY, the prosecutors there in that New York office, hate child sex traffickers, will do anything they can to prosecute them. And if they had evidence that other people should have been prosecuted besides Epstein and Maxwell, they would have done it. But the evidence wasn't there. We now know it wasn't there because almost all the files have been released, but he still alleges there's some deep conspiracy to cover the whole thing up. So we need much less of that in our politics.
Much less.
We have enough of it among our podcasters.
Oh, I mean, that's the thing. Like, I speak to people, they go, America's had enough. Okay? We've had enough of Israel. Really? Look at all these anti-Israel politicians. They're getting clobbered. Even in Kentucky, not exactly known as a Jewish stronghold, okay? But because Tucker Carlson gets numbers and makes a lot of money in these Arab countries, or Candace or these other people, because they do. Even I've heard people say Sean Ryan and Ron Paul bought on anti-Semitism. All these names. And they get big audiences. They do. It means nothing. Doesn't mean the country is with them.
Right.
When people go out and vote, that's when you know the country is with them or not. And the voters are saying, no thanks.
Yep, no, 100%. And look, Tucker Carlson's a talented guy. He'd be making a lot of money and have a big audience no matter what he was saying. He could be pro-Israel and he'd be making a lot of money and have a big audience because he's really good at what he does. But the scary thing, though, Sid, is so on our side, this stuff has kind of been beaten back. It doesn't have any expression in elected politics really yet, and in part because Trump is kind of holding the center and is very pro-Israel. But on the Democratic side, they are going crazy. I mean, there is frightening stuff. The same night that Matthew lost, this guy, what's his name, Chris Rabb in Philadelphia, who accuses Israel of an ongoing genocide, campaigns with Hassan Piker, said that Bondi Beach attack was a hoax on one of his social media accounts. Now he disavowed that and said it was a staffer. But you only get staffers like that, if that's your worldview. And then there's this crazy woman who wants to jail Jews down in Texas.
Maureen Galindo. Yeah, she's special, isn't she? And then you got the mayor here in New York who doesn't care if a Jew is dead on the street, no matter how many times he parties with the Satmar rabbis. No, they've gone nuts. The Democrats.
This is something you've been right about, and I've appreciated about you all along. We need tough Jews. We need tough Jews that will take no BS, that will be really forceful in pushing back on this stuff, because the stakes are huge. We have a constitutional system and a legal system that kind of limits what they could do, but I think they really do some scary stuff that they could in this country. That's clearly where they're trending. It is horrible and horrifying.
Even the Jews you can't count on. Chuck Schumer has been a complete waste. In fact, Trump refers to him as a Palestinian. And then I just played this. You got to hear this. This is the former comptroller running for Congress. He's a Jew, okay? But he goes to Shabbat dinners with Palestinians. He loves Mamdani. I think he's been with Hassan Piker as well. His name is Brad Lander. And he was in Queens yesterday in a mosque, a Jew in a mosque, reciting the Koran. That's the least of it. You got to hear this, Rich. Little Brad Lander, cut number 5.
I believe, as a proud Jewish New Yorker, that Israel's genocide in Gaza is a desecration, is a violation of the understanding that everyone is created in God's image, every one of those Palestinian kids in Gaza, just as divine as my beloved children. And so, yes, in Congress, I will not vote for any more U.S. military aid to Israel, not the bombs that are destroying the hospitals and schools in Gaza, not the occupation in Lebanon, which is now, I believe, unfortunately, on its way potentially to being a genocide.
Enough of this. So the moron doesn't understand that Hezbollah operates in Lebanon, or the reason why schools and hospitals have been bombed in Gaza is because purposely that's where Hamas sets up their headquarters, so morons like Brad Lander and Tucker Carlson can tell the world that Israel is killing innocent Palestinians. They did that from day one because they're smart. They knew, the Palestinians and Hamas, that the world would turn on Israel in 15 minutes. So, yes, it is true. Israel, every now and then, has no choice but to bomb these places because that's where Hamas sets up their headquarters. Are you telling me, Rich Lowry, that Brad Lander doesn't know that?
Yeah, no, it's they want to make Israel into apartheid-era South Africa. They want to make it into an international pariah. And look, I think that the most cutting criticism you can make of Bibi Netanyahu is he wanted to get along with Hamas. He thought you just kind of leave them in Gaza and reach accommodations and everything will be fine.
That's true.
and that was totally wrong. And I don't know any society on earth if a terrorist force came in over a foreign border, over a border, and did that to your women and children, tortured people, most barbaric acts imaginable, every society in the world would freak out. Now, that doesn't mean that you can violate, laws of war and commit a genocide, but they didn't. And if Hamas had just been a conventional military force and stood up with tanks and whatever and fought on a battlefield, they would have been destroyed in a day, and Israel would have let Gaza go along as it had. And, there'd be efforts to rebuild it. They had to root out a guerrilla force that wanted Israel to kill civilians, so they hit among civilians. It's so obvious.